Hello, welcome to Interview with Miss Panda. I'm your host, Amanda Blodgett. Today, my special guest today is Chen Mingjung and her daughter, Joweina Hsiao. They are going to share their bilingual family journey with us. And hello to my special guests today. Hello, Angela, and hello, Joanna.
Hello.
Hello. Hi.
Well, this is a mother and daughter pair. I don't know, you can tell they look like a sister. So it's really wonderful to have them here with us. By how to raise bilingual children is always a very main topic for my blog and also for a lot of parents, because they send me questions regarding how to raise bilingual children in a monolingual society or community, and the difficulties and joy they have, during their journey. And I think it's a very good way to share the stories with you and let other families with adult children to talk about their experience on this bilingual journey. Angela Chen Mingjung, she has been a language teacher for over 20 years. She started with teaching English and then entered into world language Mandarin Chinese instruction. Currently, she is an instructor at Menlo School in California. And Joweina Hsiao, actually, she's been learning Chinese along the way with her mother and also at school. And now she's doing an adventure in college, and she'll talk about it with us, with her new language adventure at college. So right now, I think we're going to have both of you to talk about your family bilingual with the language. So I think we're going to let Angela to talk about what's the language background in your family when you were growing up, and then what's the dynamic, when you started your own family. Angela?
Okay, so I was born in Taiwan, in Kaohsiung, so that's one of the biggest city in Taiwan. But my family, my grandparent migrated from China, I think it's 49 or 50-ish. So they speak Chaojiao. That's a subtitle of Cantonese. So I grew up learning Chaojiao at home. But then Kaohsiung in Taiwan, they primarily speak Taiwanese or Southern Min. And so that's the language I spoke outside of home. But then also when you go to school, I started learning Mandarin. Mandarin is the official language for instructions at school. So now at that time, so I speak Chaojiao with my grandparents at home. And Southern Min when I go out, maybe buy stuff on the street, and Mandarin at school and with friends. Then later on, I start English in middle school. So I started learning English, and then I came to United States for a year during high school. And then after I went back to Taiwan, I guess because I was here for years, my English speaking pronunciation is quite good. So I started teaching English with you. And then after that, I started teaching English. But then at the same time, when I was in college, because my husband's, my sister-in-law, she's a French. So we get to learn second language at college. So I pick up French. And then also was my husband's family, and also was my neighbor. Their family grew up, the parents grew up in the Japanese occupation in Taiwan. So they all speak Japanese, their daily language too. So I pick up Japanese here and there. So basically that's kind of my background. So I'll say Mandarin is still my strongest. And then English, and then Chaojiao and Southern Min. And then because I'm interested in language, so I pick up some Cantonese here and there because I accompany my grandparents to Hong Kong quite a bit when I was in college. So I pick up some Cantonese there too. So
that's fabulous. Okay. So basically you grew up in a multilingual society or a family environment. And do you think that was pretty easy for you? Because I know in Taiwan, like all of us, if you were born in Taiwan, grew up, in Taiwan, actually the whole community actually is multilingual community. So do you feel it was easy for you to pick up all different languages? How did you interact with your grandparents or relatives, with all different kind of language? Was it challenging, or was it, kind of easy for you?
I think at that time when I was little, and the whole society is more like, multilingual, right? So you have the home language, you have the dialect. Nobody really pay attention to, well, they would say what language to speak, but nobody really have the awareness of either code switching, or that you just is. The whole society just is, so you just kind of do it. It's not a big deal at all. But later, I remember in my college year, there's the political influence coming in, and are able to speak one dialect rather than the other. You do start getting some kind of, I guess, preference in jobs or just everywhere in society when you're doing a certain task. But in general, my experience is very positive. I didn't really aware of it. It just is.
It comes very natural, basically. It comes very naturally during that time. I think that was quite interesting, because I think all the theories probably came later, but actually the languages are always there, and to grow up with you. And how about Joanna? You want to talk about this because you were born in the States and you learned the Mandarin Chinese in the States as well, because mom has been doing a lot of work along the way. I think you probably want to share your experience of growing up, speaking different languages. And then can you kind of do that by stage, like before you go to school? What languages do you speak to whom? And how about, when you go to school and the teenager years, and then later on, I think, because that's a journey. So maybe we would like to hear your experience in this regard.
So I believe my first word ever was in Chinese. I must have been on the diaper changing table, and I said "diao diao," which means to throw away. And so that was my first word. And until preschool, I only spoke Mandarin Chinese and a little bit of Cantonese in terms of nursery rhymes and sing-song sort of games, because I had a nanny who spoke Cantonese. But until preschool, I only really spoke Mandarin and a little bit of Cantonese. I remember, well, I don't really remember, but apparently my mother spoke to me in English sometimes, and I'd watch English TV shows occasionally, but no real English instruction until preschool. I remember preschool was a little bit challenging because it must have been really confusing for me to distinguish, oh, this is my mom. I can speak, these two languages with her, but then I also tried to do that with my with the teachers in preschool, and that obviously didn't work. So that was a little bit confusing, but I feel like after that
6 months, she couldn't sleep for, there's nap time, right? So during nap time, everybody has to sleep. She was fine until nap time. So for the nap time, she was crying for 6 months. So she misses home. She doesn't want to be there. I guess sleeping is the thing that she just couldn't deal with English. But other than that, she was fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then let's see, in elementary school, we had the option to choose Spanish or Mandarin. And at that time, my mom was also teaching at the school, so I learned a little bit of Mandarin through there. Although I think for the most part, grammar-wise, vocabulary-wise, it was all easy. It was all stuff that I had learned before. What I had learned through that class was just a little bit of writing, and at that point, we were learning traditional. So I learned a little bit of that. And then I've been speaking Mandarin ever since I was little. And then let's see, in middle school, I started learning Japanese in 6th grade. And I've been learning Japanese for now, 9 years, almost 10 years. So middle school, high school, and now I'm going to be a rising junior in college. So I think this what's 9 years or so. And then through Japanese, actually, I've learned a little bit of kanji, which, it's borrowed from Mandarin and from older Chinese. So through that, I've learned way more kanji and Hanzi than I did before, which is kind of interesting. However, sometimes the kanji is different than it would be in Mandarin, and then sometimes it like has a different meaning. Like for example, what to run, I think it like the kanji for running in Japanese is that it means to run, but it's in Mandarin it means to walk, or vice versa, something like that. So through Japanese, I think I've also appreciated the fact that I came from a Mandarin background, and that sort of helps in the higher level things when everything turns into kanji. And there's things that are borrowed speaking wise, or like sounds that are from Chinese. So I think that's really useful. But yeah, I think that's for the most part my language story.
That's great. I mean, that's very interesting. Like, it's like when you're learning a different culture, a different language, actually that kind of brings you back to understand your own culture, own language a little bit more. I remember when I was teaching in Hawaii, a student of mine who is a Japanese American, he came to talk to me. He said, I know the words, the characters are teaching me all the Chinese characters because they're all Japanese, but they are kanji. And then I said, yes, but do you know where they're from? And I told him the story. He said, wow. So that's a very similar story, how we can kind of understand our own culture and language a little bit even more because of what we're learning outside of that language and culture. So I think that is definitely something very interesting to learn. And then I think when you learn Japanese, do you feel, because that will be your actually, what we'll say, third language, do you feel it's easier for you?
I feel like it's a little bit easier for me, and I'd say personally, language has never been too challenging. And I really like playing this. It's called the Great Language Game. It's just all these different sound clips and of people talking in their native languages, and you have to decide, what language it is. And I think that's always been really fun for me.
Okay.
And I think especially now that I live away from home for the majority of the year, I realized that speaking Mandarin is really important and is really useful. So I try to maintain it as much as possible. And then I think the past maybe couple years, I've also tried to start learning a little bit more Taiwanese, and then just like picking up like French and Spanish on the side, but not really,
Right.
that invested in it currently.
Right. Okay. Well, Mom, Angela, I think you've been doing a great job because she was learning everything from school with you, and then now she's independent all by herself in college. And she said, I want to maintain the language as much as I can. You should be very proud.
Yes.
And then so my so my question for you is, being a teacher, a world language, Mandarin Chinese teacher at school, and also the mom teacher at home to help the kids to learn the language, your heritage language. How do you balance the role? How do you do that?
I don't really need to balance. I think for me, it's really, that's who I am. So in college in Taiwan, I study broadcasting, and I like languages. And here, I do just generally interesting in sounds and languages. And my college major here is linguistic. So it's just kind of natural. And I can show you a book here. So here is this book. It's called Like Mine. And it's a story. They tell you story from different country with different kids. They speak different language. And that's what I do with her. Like, I'm interested in the book. So she started reading when she was like even before I actually speak. So maybe a couple of months old. And then it's something I like, and I just kind of do it a lot with her. But I think the challenge is really try to just speak Mandarin only at home. When she was little, it's easier, but then when she goes to like elementary school, especially like when she started like 4th grade, 5th grade, you have a lot more terminology that just it's not the things you use every day. Like, I don't know,
Yes.
like alkaline or, you know, whatever things you just don't use it every day in Mandarin. So then at that point, then the Mandarin that we spoke at home is mainly what they call the kitchen language. So the everyday life language. But I think it's really good that she's, I think, junior year, I think, that she started to wanted to do a little bit more. So then I start to speak to her more kind of more sophisticated, more social or cultural topic other than just the everyday language. And then from there, her Mandarin start picking up a little bit more. So, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I think this is something very interesting for all the parents and the teachers, educators. You know, I think it's a very important. Like, this is a part of daily life instead of to set it up like something different. Okay, so from your experience, it's like Mandarin Chinese is always a part of your daily life, so it's always there. So the kids will receive the language, and then they will hear it when they are around you. And then I think the book you showed us also kind of let them know that, you know, different people speak different languages, and then, you know, this is a part of our life, and this is what we learn. And I think that is something, I think it also has something to do with early exposure to the kids, different sounds, different languages. I think that kind of like probably encouraged it later on. Joanna is very interested in different languages, and then she doesn't feel like it's very difficult for her to pick up different languages. I think that is something, like you said, you know, started from the kitchen, and that was a simple things, daily life conversation. And then when she is really into something, when she's ready to learn something more, you add the elements into your daily conversation. I think it's probably very challenging for a lot of parents. You know, the early years, you know, we were around with them a lot, and then when they enter a middle school or higher grades, then the vocabulary is lacking because they take social studies, science, history. You know, I think that definitely is something challenging for kids to pick up those terminologies and the words, and they need to have in order to have an in-depth conversation with people. And I think that's also is a way to advance in a language. If parents or teachers, we can keep it up with our children. I really enjoyed what you were talking about. And Angela, can you talk about like the challenges? Well, you actually talk about the challenges and, you know, about the vocabulary, picking up different terminologies. And what are the challenges or breakthroughs, you know, for non-heritage students like you've been teaching, and, you know, kids with a Chinese background? Would you like to touch on that with us?
Sure. I think the challenge is always that I try to, I think the main thing that I always do is just speak Mandarin regardless. If they don't understand, I still say it. I maybe repeat it, try other way to say it. And I guess my background in education definitely helped me do this a little bit better. So I will try to use multiple ways to say the same thing. And don't give up. I think a lot of time I see parents or see kids switch back to the language they're comfortable with, like primarily English, very fast. But I think it just try to stick with it. You just do it. You just say it. Use multiple ways to say the same thing, and be consistent. And then the kids will know. Well, they will have to at least learn how to listen in Mandarin. If they don't understand certain vocabulary or certain concept, yes, so I'll say the English equivalent. But most of the time, I just try to do Mandarin only. and then
Right.
they get used to it. I think the frustration a lot of time is coming from I speak Mandarin and they speak English back to me. But to a point, you can't really force them. So, and as a language teacher, I feel that, well, if you don't force them, they still get the listening part in, right? And then when they're ready or when there's a need for it to pick up the speaking is really not that difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I always joke that Joanna is literal illiterate in Chinese because she cannot write or read. But I don't think that's a big deal, because if she needs to in the future, she have the strong listening and speaking background, she can pick it up. So, and then as of now, she doesn't really have the needs to do that. And then I don't think that's necessary. Of course, I would like her to read the Chinese classic, right? The Hong Lou Meng, The Dream of Red Chamber, or the martial art novel I really like, Jin Yong. But she had plenty of time. If she really wants to, she can pick it up. And I'm not worried about that. Yeah.
Right. I don't worry about that either, actually, because I think the interesting thing is when she mentions that she actually has been taking Japanese for 9 years now. And I think, when you're learning, she's actually learning characters and kanji, but it's part of the Chinese. So basically, along the time, I believe she will advance to a level that she can read as well, in both Japanese and Chinese. I think your approach is more, let's relax and then we'll add things on. And then when there's a need, they'll come back to the language. And I think that's a very different approach from a lot of people say, oh, we need to do all different kind of aspects. So everything should be going together. I started, teaching my own kids writing Chinese character very late, comparing to a lot of other teachers or families. And I think it's not actually. It can be. I have to say, it has been worked out very well, because I think they understand more, and then they can comprehend a little bit more at the same time. So now I'm going to switch to Joanna. And Joanna, because on this learning a journey, I think you probably have encountered some difficulties and challenges when you're learning Chinese. What is your perspective on, the most difficult or challenging part of learning Mandarin Chinese when you're growing up? No matter is it speaking, listening comprehension, reading and writing. Would you like to share that with us?
So let's see. I feel like I learned Mandarin mostly not in the classroom, so from a home environment, and that involves, it's a very natural process. Like you see a cup and it just happens naturally. For me, I never really learned any reading or writing other than a little bit in elementary school, and obviously through all of the Japanese that I've learned a little bit of kanji through that. But I've never really sat down and tried to learn the reading and writing. I feel like if I wanted to, I probably could. But at this point in time, I don't think it's necessary for me. I also think that sometimes, say, for example, if somebody from Taiwan posts something on my Facebook page or something, and it's in Chinese, I obviously feel a little bit sad that I can't read it, but then I utilize my tools like Google Translate, right? And then I can read the pinging or have it speak it to me, and then I can understand it. So it's not totally unreachable. So I think that's exciting and also not as depressing, I think. And I think in terms of like listening and speaking, I don't think that's ever really been a problem for me. I've grown up in the Bay Area in San Francisco, California, so it's a pretty multilingual space, I think, for the most part, even though I went to a predominantly white middle school and high school. I don't think I ever really felt like an outsider so much. I think it was mostly food related and like cultural things that sort of set me apart from other people, but in terms of speaking and other things, it really wasn't a problem. I think the only thing that I really remember was in elementary school, when I used to bring lunches to school, people would like ever so slightly like make fun of me or think that my food was weird, but that was like a part of me, and I felt in a certain way like attacked by it, but I still liked it and I still ate it like regardless of them. So that really wasn't a problem for me.
It's interesting. It's always there. I think that's the one thing, because Angela, you've been providing that Chinese environment, and you're speaking Chinese no matter what. I think it's there. So I think even though sometimes they reply back to you in English, you prefer they would reply to you in Mandarin Chinese. But during the teenage years, I think probably they will reply more in English. But I think because you're being very consistent using Mandarin Chinese, so obviously we see the effect, because it's never hard for her, just like Joanna says, it's never hard for her to for listening or speaking, because it's always there. And then another thing, it's very interesting, she brought up the technology. And well, that's definitely something they can utilize to use, and to not only listen to the pronunciation from the pinyin, and then to kind of translating to what she understands. And well, as a teacher, Angela, what do you think about that, using technology to learn when you are learning the language?
Technology is great. So I have my student try to use Siri to type in Chinese. Of course, when their pronunciation is not good, they won't be able to do it. I have them use Google Translate too, and then teach them how to use properly. Like, you want to look in the noun. When you're looking at noun, there's noun and verb, so you don't want to just randomly pick. And then my student knows that Google Translate, you need to have background. You need to do your background in grammar, vocabulary, to pick the right vocab for you. And they know that it's only good for vocabulary. Grammar is usually very bad. And that's fine. And for Joanna, I know she also sometimes type in Chinese. So like reply to someone posts Chinese on the Facebook, and I do that too. So like I know I sometimes when I text her, I will maybe do a little recording in Chinese, or sometimes I may type Japanese. And sometimes my Japanese speaking is better, then I'll use the Siri to have the computer type for me and then send it to her. Any way that you want to use technology to help you communicate, they're all good. It's really about communications. So if you can communicate, any tools, it could be dictionary, it could be computer, it could be your iPhone, anything's good, and drawing. So as long as you can communicate and both parties like it, why not? Yeah.
Exactly. I think the interesting thing is that technology actually is here to help us to, and I think when the kids know how to use the technology to learn, and they will understand that maybe the technology is not perfect yet. So like we still need to know the basics. We need to know the tones. If we don't know the tones, then the word can be very off. What do you really want to say? So I think that is something very interesting, to combine the technology. Even when they're using the technology, they are learning in a level, and then they can improve, because they need to use the technology to help them on the learning process. Actually, they're learning at the same time. And that's definitely something very, very helpful for the students right now, is, and then I think all the text, like my kids, they would text and to the grandparents or to aunties and in Chinese, but sometimes they don't know the words, but they can pick and choose. So this is something very interesting to see how they use the technology to help them, and to be actually even more curious about the language they are learning. And so right now, Angela, so we'll talk about we talk about, you've been teaching for a long time. So there are a lot of theories we have learned at school about linguistics and about, language learning. But how about when you apply to real life, daily life, teaching your kids? How do you combine the theory and the everyday life learning, in language teaching?
Like I said before, it's never really about theory or practice. It's more about who you are and what do you think is important, and you kind of pick and choose. And a lot of time it's kind of internalized that you just do it naturally. You just kind of think that this is important. Like I'm very like speaking Mandarin to my children is the number one things. So and that never yell. So that's just what I do every day. And then, but sometimes if I'm tired and they are not really into listening to it, and I'm fine too. I think it's what comes down to it is what you believe in it, and then you just kind of do it.
Well, you go with the
Yeah,
principle.
there's no really theory or practice, and I guess as an educator, you do it every day, and then you modify when things doesn't work out, and then you experiment, and you try this a little bit more, and then that's just how it is. It's not a big science. You just
Right.
do it, and then for me, just speaking Mandarin to them. That's it. Yeah.
That's your key principle.
Yeah.
Always speak Mandarin Chinese to your kids. We see that. So now, Joanna, you actually recently did a school project, an assignment in college. And I think that has a lot to do with your language learning, especially Mandarin Chinese. That was a really interesting assignment. And I think you can share with us. And then I think a lot of people will find it's inspiring as well. You actually interviewed your mother, for your assignment. And I remember she was speaking Mandarin Chinese. You did everything in English and tried to, complete this linguistic report. Would you like to touch on that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this past semester, I took sociolinguistics. I was originally going to sign up to take something about Arabic and cultures or something. Both seemed really interesting to me, but sociolinguistic fulfilled a requirement, so then I ended up choosing that one. And then so our final project then was to do a podcast, 5 to 7 minute long podcast, using GarageBand or whatever other thing, but GarageBand is one of the easier ones to use, about something that we had learned during the semester. So we had talked about bilingualism, we had talked about code switching, we talked about AAVE, we talked about all of these different language ideologies, and how, little kids learn, and boys language and girls language, and like feminine male speech sort of things. And I've always really been interested in language, from probably because of my mom and her influence, but I don't know that it was ever really like a drastic sort of a like you should do this type of a thing. It was more just like it just kind of influenced me and just kind of happened. So then for my final project, like you said, I chose to interview my mother, and it was everything that I talked about was basically under the umbrella of like immigrant linguistics, of like, did she face any prejudice when she was speaking Mandarin, or from like her heritage and cultural part, if she was not able to get a job because she spoke with an accent or something. And then I also talked about like bilingualism and how we differ, and then also how we code switch. And I've always thought that was really interesting. So that was what my podcast was about. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I think the important thing is we are learning the language, and then it leads us to something else. We want to know deeper about the theory behind everything, and then how parents, came from different background and came to the United States, and then to use different languages and in workplace and then in everyday life. And then I think that is something quite interesting. And then I think right now we're going to switch our interview in Mandarin Chinese. So Angela, 你有没有什么想要告诉大家，对现在正在教自己小孩子中文的父母亲，在国外教自己孩子中文的父母亲，你有没有对他们来说有什么特别的建议？ I'm going to let Angela talk about her top advice for parents who are teaching their children Mandarin Chinese right now.
就坚持吧，就坚持说中文。不管在什么状况下，就 坚持说中文。然后平常跟孩子，就是你自己本身必须也是要喜欢这个语言，然后或者不一定是你的母语，只要是语言，那你有这样的态度，孩子就会觉得哦，语言很好玩。我觉得我的2个孩子从来没有上过中文学校。我觉得，因为可能我自己也教过，然后我看过太多孩子因为上了中国学校，对这个语言有反感。那我觉得我宁可他们对文化跟语言是保持兴趣的。那如果他的语言的水平不高也没有关系，只要他有兴趣，然后经常会接触到，那就以后都可以再继续。像我觉得平常就是坚持说中文，然后如果碰到有意思的东西，是中文的也好，是英文的也好，是任何语言的话，然后我自己出去吃饭，可能我们去吃墨西哥餐厅的时候，我也会想学这个东西怎么说，那个东西怎么说，就是基本上给一个孩子觉得语言是很好玩的，然后是可以从当中得到很多乐趣，也学到很多东西的。
Yeah. So also I think it's being a curious teacher, being a curious mother to share your curiosity with your children. And I think it's contagious and let them feel like it's something like they would move on, when time comes. 那 Joanna, 我也要问你一个问题，就是说你可能对现在目前比你小的，然后现在在学中文的孩子的，你有没有什么想法，有什么建议给他们，用中文讲给他们听好吗？
我觉得有时候跟妈妈还是爸爸说中文的时候，有时候会有一点困难，可是也要困难才会觉得有好处。然后我想要跟妈妈讲中文的时候，我就会用。可是我觉得他每天都跟我讲中文的话，我也会有一点想要。所以如果他每天讲的时候，我可以讲一点点，然后我觉得这样子蛮好玩的。然后我也觉得有时候我们在外面的时候，我想要跟他讲话，可是我不想要让别的人知道我们在讲什么的时候，我们就会用中文。
你跟你室友，你在宿舍的时候，你跟我打电话，你可以讲
有一次我在我的宿舍，我的门是打开的，所以我在跟我妈妈讲话。然后，我有一个朋友是在学中文，然后我也有一个朋友是从中国来的，然后他们2个都过来我的房间，很好奇为什么我在讲中文，然后我在跟谁讲中文。
不是我说，我要说的是你有一次跟我打电话打了40分钟，是不是？就在用中文抱怨各式各样的东西。
是吗？我不记得。
你在 rant。You're ranting。
yes。
对。因为他在 renting， 所以他在抱怨，所以不想让你的室友知道，对不对？所以他就抱怨了，好像40分钟，讲了40分钟的中文，很厉害。
Here we go, the secret language. Okay, it's definitely a fun secret language to have when you grow up, when you leave home, when you don't have mom and dad around you. So basically, that becomes actually a language attached with your affection, with your parents, with your relatives, with the loved ones. And I'm very happy to hear the story, and then I will also want to thank you for sharing your bilingual family journey with us. Wonderful stories here, and we definitely see it's not only the language, it's love, and it is learning about the culture from then till now, and it will keep going on. And thank you so much, Joanna and Angela, for joining me today. Thank you. Super. Thank you very much for joining Miss Panda for this episode of Interview with Miss Panda. I hope you have a great time and learn something from this special story from Joanna, and also Angela. And we'll see you next time. Have a great day. Goodbye. 再见，我们下次见。